From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. You can submit your questions anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. Chrissy Teigen made headlines last week with her trending hashtag towards Donald Trump. I don't see what the big deal is. People have been saying that about me ever since my obsession with pumpkin spice latte. And now, broadcasting from the interwebs, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
What was the hashtag? And also, how the hell do you even know any of that? I don't even know who Chrissy Teigen is.
Oh, okay. So Chrissy Teigen is a supermodel.
Oh.
She is... she's married to, oh my God.
John Legend.
John Legend.
Oh, okay,
yes.
That part I knew.
And,
I did know John Legend.
Yeah, so Trump went after the two of them because I guess they were proud about some kind of legislation or something, or some kind of thing that passed or whatever, and they didn't thank him personally, so he got really offended by that. And he
seems right.
Oh, he said some nasty stuff about Chrissy Teigen, and
wow.
I can't even remember what it was exactly, but I'm not even going to repeat her hashtag.
Oh, really? It's that
on
bad?
This show.
Oh,
it's
wow.
Pretty bad.
It's
Look
hard
it up.
that you
Google
dedicated
it.
the entire
Google
intro to getting this.
Oh.
But we don't get to say it.
When you Google it and you see it, you'll be like, yeah, this makes perfect sense.
That's how all of our jokes are, Nick.
Nick ordering a pumpkin spice latte, this is exactly what would describe him.
I'm going to have to look it up now. But I like that our jokes are now on a deep, deep delay.
I think
you have to do it at home.
Most of our listeners probably understand the joke because it was
DIY
in the news.
Punchlines.
It was definitely in the news.
Well, okay. So I guess I didn't follow up on that. I didn't even catch it. But I'm glad that this is the way people get to laugh at our jokes is they have to go home, take the time, look it up.
Well, we're a scholarly podcast.
That's right. You have to look up all of our jokes in order to get them. But yeah,
so
this
hello, listeners.
Hello, listeners.
We're recording over the internet.
Doing it Skype-y style.
No Jacob today.
No Jacob. So it'll be a much... Even though I have been talking nonstop trash. And actually, Jacob and I, we have a new bet going on. Did you happen to catch that on Twitter?
I just caught that like 15 minutes ago.
Yeah. So
another bet that will take months for you to pay off.
Oh, I'm not going to have to. I'm going to win this one. So his team, the Nolans Saints, I believe is what they're called, their quarterback, a great man, Drew Brees, he smashed all of his little fingers, and so he can't play football no mo. And so
is he out for the season?
Yeah, he is. I think he's got to have hand surgery, so that dude ain't coming back. So they're having to start their bench quarterback, and my team, the North Carolina Panthers,
the Kitties,
the Kitties as he likes to call them, we are not doing great. We are 0-2 at home, and our quarterback also is not being very successful. But at least mine has all 10 fingers, and so I have told Jacob that I believe that the Panthers will do better than the Saints, even when Drew Brees is gone. So we have not set the parameters of this bet, but sushi is on the line, and I feel good about it, Nick. I think this is my moment.
I don't think there's any reason a quarterback needs to have all 10 fingers.
No,
I think as long as you got the 5 on your throwing hand, you're probably good.
Yeah, you just need those 5. And you probably don't even need the pinky if we're being honest. So I think a solid 4,
true.
And you've got what you need. And if you have a really, really good index finger, I think you're fine. So this is probably why we didn't go pro. But anyway, so Jacob, wherever you are, I 100% am sure you're not listening to this. And I look forward to eating all of your sushi. So that's coming up. So anyway, we have got lots of letters to get to, really good things in the queue. And this one actually just came in today, but because this individual sponsors the show, they go right to the tippy top of the queue. So if you want yours read quicker, give us money. That's literally what we do for a living. In fact, you can just come give us money and talk to us right now. All right. So
I guess that is true.
It is true. It's true anyway. Okay, so how to move on without closure? That's the question. Hey guys, Ice here. Apparently, the relationship I have been in for the last 8 years is over. I say apparently because there has been no official ending. Here are the basic facts. We don't live together, which is a subject for another email sometime later. Throughout the day, I started texting around 6 a.m., and our conversation began. I was getting short responses Thursday morning, indicating that he was already having a really busy day. Around 9 a.m., I get a text. It says, "Hope your day is going better than mine. Kiss, kiss, kiss." About 9:15 a.m., I drive past his place of employment. My job requires me to transport residents to doctor's appointments, and I notice that neither his car nor his bike are in the parking lot. My brain starts calculating. I just saw a large group of motorcycle people getting ready to head down to Memphis for the St. Jude ride. So I message him while my patient is talking to their doctor. "You're not at work today," I said. "Is everything okay? Did you ride down to Memphis with the St. Jude crew?" After 4 hours of no response from him and seeing some photos on the local motorcycle crew website showing that he is there with his ex-wife, I sent my final message. "I hope you both enjoy the ride and arrive and return safely." That was on September 12th. Today is September 17th, and I have not had any communication with him at all. I packed up everything that he has given me over the years and all of his belongings that were at my home, and after some advice from the Scoop group, I put that box on a shelf in the garage, then proceeded to pour myself a large glass of whiskey and sip it in the dark. I have been wondering every day and night since then if this is really how an 8-year relationship ends. He has been my best friend and sounding board. I have either talked to or texted with him every day of my life for the last 8 years. Yes, literally every day. Are we done? Do I get an apology? Do I get an explanation? Really? This is how it's going to end? So my question is this. Is closure necessary to move on in a healthy manner? Thank you for your time. Ice Blue Scoop.
Wow. Well, first off, sorry, Ice Blue. That really sucks. Yeah, that's really terrible. I guess I'll give my take on this, and then pass it off to you, Jim. But I guess, as far as a lot of these questions, are we done? Do I get an apology? Don't hold your breath, I'd say. Right. Do I get an explanation? Definitely don't hold your breath for that one either. Is this really how it ends? That sucks. And I think a lot of relationships, most relationships, when they end, are going to end on a low note. That's just kind of how it is. There's very few relationships that you look back and be like, "Oh, yeah, that was a good ending."
Right. It never ends well.
Exactly. Now, I think the big question is closure necessary to move on in a healthy manner? Yes.
Good question.
However, this is one thing that I've worked with a lot of people going through similar experiences, being in a long-term relationship that ends abruptly and their search for closure. And the thing that I think is really important is that closure is in your hands, not the other person's. That's I think for somebody to get closure, they have to be able to do that themselves, regardless of what happens with the other person.
Okay.
Right? I think, and here's the thing. I was actually listening to Will Smith, one of America's greatest philosophers.
Yes.
And he was given this talk, and one thing he said really kind of blew me away. And he said, we have this idea that responsibility and fault are somehow connected. I think he was saying fault.
Okay.
But essentially the argument he was making is that if something is your responsibility and it's your job to take care of it, it doesn't matter who broke it.
Okay.
It's still your responsibility. And he used this as an example for mental health.
Oh, wow.
And heartache. And he said, our own mental health, our own emotional health is for us to deal with. It's our responsibility. And it would be great. It would be great if we lived in a world where if you broke it, you're responsible for fixing it. But that's not the world that we live in.
Oh, wow.
And unfortunately, we live in a world where it is going to be other people's fault. People are going to hurt us. We are going to be broken because of other people's choices. But it's still going to fall back on us. It's still our responsibility to pick ourselves up. So one thing that I've noticed with a lot of people who go through a divorce or something like that, we tend to have this idea that I will feel better when this other person does X, Y, or Z.
Right.
When they apologize, or when they feel bad, or if their life gets really shitty, then that's when I'll feel better.
Right.
But that's not a really good pathway to finding closure. I think true closure is when you're able to find happiness regardless of the condition of the other person.
Yeah, no, that's really well said. And I can't believe that Will Smith kind of unpacked that. I think that that's really deep, and I think he's actually really right on. So Ice Blue, Nick took the high road. I'm going to take the low road.
Somebody has to.
F this guy. Yeah, no, I am furious because this is something we hear about all the time, and it's ghosting. And it's just like we live in this new world where people do not have this sense of responsibility. And I guess I don't mean it in the sense of the way that Will did. Just decency. Just human freaking decency. That if somebody matters to you, if they matter in your life, if you care at all for them, if you have any investment in them at all, that something is owed to them, something, an explanation, a goodbye, a message that says, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you, and good luck. Anything. I mean, but stark silence has this deeply psychologically abusive resonance to it. There's something so cruel about silence in these relationships. And I think that somebody, obviously, I know you agree with me, but somebody who has been with somebody for 8 freaking years, and then to catch them, what appears to be cheating, and Ice Blue, if your boyfriend had responded and wanted to talk it over, I would have said, hey, give him the benefit of the doubt. Yes, he did appear to go with his ex-wife on this run. There's an explanation owed about this, but let's at least approach this cautiously. I don't want to jump to conclusions. But in this case, you sort of sent a passive message letting him know, hey, I'm aware of what you're doing, and I'm aware of who you're with. And apparently he picked up what you were throwing down and just abandoned ship. And I just got to say, God, that is so frustrating. I mean, to ghost somebody in general is terrible. And then to do it in this sense where you have 8 years invested with somebody and they're just pissed they got caught and they're running away, I'm just devastated for you and angry on your behalf. And I think that the question you're asking of, is it possible to kind of move on without that closure? I think Nick's ultimately right, because very rarely do we receive the kind of closure that we find healing or that ends on good terms where we get to be friends, especially when there's been a betrayal and that's the end of the relationship. It's almost never satisfying. But I guess for me, Nick, when I hear that word closure, I think for me what I'm kind of hearing is not a peaceable end, but rather more like, isn't it necessary to sort of have an explanation or to have some kind of information that at least gets some questions answered? And I guess the short answer to Ice Blue is no, that isn't necessary, because often too few of us get that.
Yeah.
And we have to move on from it, right?
Well, I was going to say that would be a terrible world to live in if it was necessary. Because so many of us don't get any kind of explanation.
Right, okay.
And if closure meant that we had to have that, we've got a lot of unclosed people, right? Walking around. And the other thing, too, I really want to clarify, I'm not sticking up for that dude.
No, not at all.
That was a shit move.
Yeah.
That was absolutely a piece of shit move.
Yes.
But I do think that, I mean, at the end of the day, like for me, I'm kind of a control freak, and I want everything that has to do with my life, my survival, my well-being. I want all of that to be in my hands and not anybody else's. Because I don't want to trust my mental or emotional health to somebody else. I don't want to be in that position where for me to be happy, I need somebody else's permission. Or for me to move on with my life, I need somebody else's permission. That's something, and it's going to take a long time. That's something that I've noticed with a lot of my friends that have gone through similar situations, where they get divorced, or even myself having gone through that. Like, it takes years to truly become selfish. Because for the longest time, your focus is always on the other person, and it becomes so difficult to try to find happiness independent of the other person.
Yeah, and Ice Blue, I guess my final thought on that is, if we're taking just a literal reading of your question, and you're asking us, hey, listen, this terrible thing just happened to me, and I guess I'm asking you guys, is it necessary to have closure for me to heal? Our answer is no, it's not necessary. But the question beneath your question is more about the process that you're about to go through. Ice, if this doesn't work out, if he doesn't reach out, if he doesn't offer an explanation, then you going through this is going to be grieving. You're going to lose a relationship. You're going to lose somebody who you've cared for and taken seriously for 8 years. And whenever you've been unceremonially just thrown away like this, you are going to have deep existential questions about your own worth. You're going to have insecurities. You're going to have pain like you've lost somebody in death. And some of that is inevitable. And I'm so sorry that you're going to have to go through it. And it's made all the more difficult by not having answers, by not having your final say, by not having that last fight. It's all the more complicated. And my heart's broken for you, my friend. But I do know you are bigger than this. I know you are bigger than this relationship. I know you will transcend it. And I will not allow you to question your own self-worth based on this selfish action of somebody else. That other person may be done with the relationship. That doesn't mean that you are not worthy of love. That doesn't mean that you do not have value. You do. And many, many people around you see it. Your patients see it. Your family sees it. Your friends in our community and in other podcast communities see it. And I just want to remind you of that as you're going through this. It's something you're going to have to remind yourself of over and over.
Absolutely. And easy on the whiskey. We all care about you. We don't want you to see it become self-destructive.
That's right. Yeah, go easy on the whiskey. And if you need to send it to us so we can take care of that responsibly, we will.
We'll take
because we're friends. That's right. That's what friends do. So hang in there, Ice Blue. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will discuss how to deal with how to deal with a girlfriend's past trauma.
That's correct. This week's Their Producer sponsor is Robert Brownie Jr. Mint. Robert Brownie Jr. Mint is an American football wide receiver who was the 6th round pick by the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2010. Mint has amassed more receptions and receiving yards than any other player since he entered the league. Leaving the Steelers in 2019, Mint was traded to the Oakland Raiders, where he promptly missed practice, was fined $50,000, and got into a fight with the general manager before being released from his contract and credibly accused of multiple rapes, and then acquired by the New England Patriots. If you know who Robert Brownie Jr. Mint is, you can go to www.patreon.com/therapy and sign up for as low as $1 and comment on this episode to tell us what sports superstar Mr. Mint is.
Yeah, and how much you really enjoyed that reference.
I loved it.
All right, we're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next question is, how do I deal with my girlfriend's past trauma?
Hi guys, I've just hit 6 months together with a beautiful woman that matches really well with me, and I am absolutely crazy about her. And so far, she miraculously seems to love me a lot too. Some background on my girlfriend. She suffered some major trauma in her childhood. She grew up very poor in England, and her dad died when she was 5. Then her mom's new boyfriend proceeded to single her out for abuse and rape from ages 6 to 12. Thanks to a neighbor becoming aware of it and calling the police, she was taken away to a children's home at that point and began a long journey of healing. She's done a ton of therapy, and I'm constantly amazed at how well she is able to function. She is an outgoing social butterfly, and we are able to have great sex, snuggle, and be very close physically with ease. However, she does have difficulty in sharing her own emotions and being intimate with her words. She no longer has any contact with her family, and occasionally something will trigger her and she'll need to spend a night being a bit weepy and sad. Holidays and anything that makes her feel like everyone else but her has a happy family tends to trigger this. So my question is, do you have any tips on what I can do as her boyfriend to help her through these bad episodes and help her feel like she can share her feelings more with me. So far, my tactic has simply been to be the patient, loving guy I like to think I am. I want to support her as best as I can. She does have a therapy appointment soon for this, as do I. Thanks, Anonymous.
I think a lot of the stuff that you can do, it sounds like you're already doing.
I love what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think just, you said being a patient, loving person. Yes. I think that's huge. Patience, especially. I mean, this whole thing started when she was 6 years old to 12 years old. So that's 6 years of constant torment and torture.
Good Lord.
It's gonna take a long time for this to work itself out. Even if therapy goes really well, it's going to take a long time. I guess one bit of feedback I have, if you're asking, what can I do to help out or to be more supportive? I think one of the best things a support person can do is to actually ask the person themselves, hey, what do you need from me?
Right.
When this is going on, how do you want me to handle it? Do you need space? Do you need me to leave you alone? Do you not want space? Do you want me to be around? Do you want me to be close? Because for the most part, I think most people are pretty good at directing their support, and letting them know how they can help.
Mm-hmm. No, that's really good. And to the writer, and I didn't read this part, but the writer pointed out that they had written to us before and that we had given some decent advice and it was useful. And so great to hear from you again, writer, and so glad to see that you're in a new relationship and that things are going as well as they are. And again, I want to echo Nick, you are handling this exactly the way we would want you to. Being patient, being kind, offering silence, offering closeness, and just being aware and not having high expectations of a person when they're going through this. And the thing that you kind of pointed out, writer, is that your girlfriend has difficulty sharing her emotions or being intimate with her words. And, that was an interesting sentence to me. I guess I would be curious, and again, you're not here for me to ask this question, but I guess when I hear that, I think, is that you, the boyfriend, craving that? Is that maybe your love language, words of affirmation? And is that maybe lacking from the relationship and it's sort of come up between you that maybe she's now confessed, well, I don't really feel very comfortable talking in loving ways. It's not something I'm very familiar with. I guess I'd just be more curious about that. And if that's the case, if it turns out that it's kind of your need and she struggles with it, I would advise just being extremely patient with that. If she's willing to learn how, we can practice role modeling that. And we start with baby steps. If an expression of love is unfamiliar to a person and that's not what they natively speak, we want to give them permission to sort of practice that and try to find opportunities to notice when they're doing it and to thank them for it. And especially if they've come from such deep and difficult trauma, we want to be extremely gentle and just very encouraging. And the other thing you talked about, writer, was that for your girlfriend, anytime that she's reminded of good families, so like holidays or special occasions, it's very painful because it really reminds her of her deep loss and what she's suffered in sort of the hell that she grew up in. And so to that extent, I think that's where I come back to what Nick said, which is getting to know your girlfriend and asking her, hey, when holidays come, what is the best way to love you? Is there anything that you've found useful in the past? And it could be something, really contrarian. And I don't know if this is the case, so you should definitely ask. But it might be something like, on holidays, I don't like to think about the traditional and, what people like to do in their homes and sharing turkey and things like that. I just want to go to a movie and get Chinese food or something, that's like, okay, that in no way reflects the holiday. Or it might be in Christmas time, I want to go to the Bahamas and do nothing with snow and nothing that's, in the house, around the hearth, that kind of thing. And perhaps that would be in some way a relief or an escape from some of those really painful memories. But I do defer back to Nick's point, going back to your girlfriend and asking, hey, look, this relationship's getting pretty serious. I can tell that you suffer around times of holidays. Can we come up with some new ideas? Let's do something different. Let's make new memories and see if that's helpful to her. But, also be patient, brother. You're in a new relationship. I admire that you want to be kind to her. I admire that you're looking for opportunities to be loving. I'm glad you're writing into us and inviting us to give you that feedback. And in addition to that, I would just caution you, keep in mind it's still a new relationship, and so I don't want you to be responsible for too much of her pain or her healing yet. A, that's too much pressure on you, and B, that's too much pressure on the relationship, and it's just appropriate for us to go slow with that too. So I don't want you to feel like you have to take all that on your shoulders.
And that was actually something I was going to bring up too, that this is a new relationship, and I can't remember the last letter that he had sent in. Mm-hmm. But one thing that kind of stuck out in my mind that kind of popped out to me was just the idea that sometimes when we are hurting, when we were in a negative relationship, if we jump into another relationship, we are naturally attracted to people that we feel like we need to take care of.
Exactly. Yep.
And so I'm not saying, writer, that that's you in this particular case. I don't know enough about what's going on to make that assessment, but that is something I want to caution you about and maybe something to take a look at.
Yes, great advice. And again, to just underline something Nick pointed out, in no way are we implying that you're doing anything wrong. We're just being your friends and telling you, keep in mind it's a 6-month relationship. You got a long way to go, and I think you're handling it excellently. But don't be afraid to also offer some space and not necessarily feel that you need to rescue, because it's maybe not your responsibility yet, and it might not even be the right time for that yet. Because one thing about somebody who's been through as much trauma as your girlfriend has, I want to make sure, if I were in her life as her therapist, I'd be telling her, don't necessarily put weight on your new boyfriend to solve this for you. I'm glad he's a nice guy, but I don't want that to become sort of your crutch, because I want you to just continue to process this for yourself. But anyway, you're doing a great job, man, and we're grateful that you're writing into the show again, and grateful that you've put up with us for as long as you have, man. You're a saint.
And grateful that you're getting help, too.
Yeah, that a boy.
He says he's she has a therapy appointment, as do I. So that's awesome.
He knows what he's doing. Great job, man. Hang in there.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will discuss why compliments hurt. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's Theraproducer sponsor is Kayla Lansbury. Kayla was an Australian recipient of the Victoria Cross, the highest award for gallantry in the face of the enemy that could be awarded to members of the Australian Armed Forces at the time. Woods enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in September 1916 and joined the 48th Battalion in France in September 1917. Did you know that Australia even has armed forces, Nick?
I'm just aware. I immediately became aware of how nice that was to Kayla, while Robert Brownie Jr. meant chairman of the board.
Chairman of the board.
got the reference that he got. Wow. Be very grateful, Kayla.
Yeah, it's not my fault that Robert Brownie Jr. meant plays for the Dirty, Dirty Patriots. And also cost me a week 1 victory in my fantasy football league. Yeah. It's funny because Robert didn't do anything wrong, but I'm pissed at the other guy. So somebody was getting it, Nick, and I decided Rob could take it.
And if you would like these wonderful things said about you, and would like to make the show possible, you can go to www.patreon.com/therapy and sign up. That's www.patreon.com/therapy.
We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. This next question is a good one, Nick. It's about going through a lot of pain, even when people are being nice to you. Hey guys, I heard of you through Ice Cream Social and have been listening for a while. A bit about me, I've struggled with depression and anxiety for almost as long as I can remember. I was diagnosed type 2 manic bipolar when I was 19. I've never had insurance, so keeping up with any medication or someone to speak with has been hard. For most of 9 years, I've just tried helping myself and staying self-aware that I have a problem. From numerous suicide attempts, panic attacks, and even during my divorce, hallucinating. I've tried everything I can to be calmer and happier. I've tried tracking manic peaks and triggers with no real answers in the end. Over the past 6 months or so, I became so depressed, I became addicted to opioids. I got so scared when I developed a plan to kill myself again that I called my mom and moved back home immediately to get clean and did quickly upon my arrival. I'm using this as my safe place. I help my mom, and she tries to help me tackle my mental illness. We use the distraction technique, and it helps, but one thing I've found is that I get upset when she or others try to give me positive support, such as, you matter, or you're worth it, or you're a wonderful person, I love the person you are, etc. Even writing this just triggers an emotion of anger and anxiety. It makes me want to lash out. I calmly tell my mother that I can list several reasons why you're wrong for thinking I'm so great. I see how upset I get and tell myself my mind is playing tricks on me. I wish I knew why it triggers this emotional response. Why do I get mad and anxious when I'm being told that I matter? So sorry for the long message, guys, but would love some insight from you. Keep up with your amazing podcast. Listening to it brings me lots of hope. Thanks, effing you in the effing face, Scoop-demic. Great question.
Great question. Thank you for writing in. Thank you for listening. First off, as far as the numerous suicide attempts, I'm glad they were all a failure. I'm glad you're still with us.
That's right.
And, the thing that really kind of stuck out to me, obviously, as an addiction specialist, was the opioid use.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that you nailed that in the bud right away and got yourself clean.
Yes.
With help, that is so important.
You did yourself a huge favor.
Exactly, because if that was still going on, everything else, I think, takes a back seat. If you are addicted to opiates, it's a one-way street, and it's just going to get worse. And not only that, it gets worse fast.
Yes.
Very fast. And once you get down in that rut, it is really difficult to get yourself out of that. So definitely stay away from any psychoactive substances, not just the opiates. Stay away from anything. But I'm glad you got that under control, and hopefully it stays under control. So why does it hurt, or why does it bother you when people give you compliments? I have a theory on this, and I'm interested to hear what you think, Jim. My training, all kind of going back to cognitive behavioral therapy. We talk a lot about this and about that things have meaning.
Right.
And it's the meaning that we give the event that causes an emotional reaction.
Yes.
So it's not that somebody gives you a compliment. It's what it means to you that somebody gives you a compliment that causes that negative emotional reaction. So immediately in my mind, I'm thinking it probably is hurtful because it kind of puts a spotlight on your own thought patterns about yourself. And it causes conflict within your own thought patterns, and that difficulty resolving that may lead to anger.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. I think cognitive behavioral therapy is the right way to see that. And I kind of want to backpedal as well and come back to sort of the intro of the letter where we're kind of hearing what's going on. And so the first thing I want to do is just do a quick little info moment here for the general audience. So the writer identified as being bipolar 2. And so this is something we've talked about on the show before. Bipolar is a phrase, it's a diagnosis that a lot of people misunderstand. And it's one of the most commonly quoted and most seldom understood diagnoses that we see. And so a lot of people misunderstand bipolar to mean big mood swings. And by that they mean, gosh, one minute you seemed very happy and we were getting along, and the next minute you were really angry at me or really sad and you were isolating from me. I think you're bipolar. That couldn't be further from the truth. That has nothing to do with what bipolar is. That's just called mood swings. That's a different thing entirely. Bipolar 1 and 2 has to do with entering into mental states. And so that is way different than a mere emotion. While emotions are part of it, a mental state is a very different thing. And so we're usually talking about mania or hypomania, which is just beneath mania. So we kind of have the two different types, bipolar 1 and bipolar 2, to distinguish how severe the mania is. And so a person with bipolar oscillates between a manic state, whether that's hypomanic or manic, and a depressed state. So they go from one range of motion where their mind is in this weird euphoria where they're just, everything is awesome. They have unlimited energy. They don't sleep for days. Everything is grandiose. Everything is excellent. They have tons of enthusiasm for things and very limited judgment, very limited ability to stop themselves. And so when somebody is having a manic stage, they are very likely to abuse substances, to make terrible choices for themselves and others, to put themselves at risk. And it just seems bizarre sometimes. And you heard in the letter, there's a lot of things that can go with this. There's psychotic features that can go with this, where we might have hallucinations. There's all sorts of things that can happen. We could hear things that aren't there. We could see things that aren't there. And then we have general delusions, which is a misunderstanding of the world around us, not understanding who we are, feeling like we are in danger. And we can also have things like panic attacks that are associated with this too. And then when somebody reverts to the other side of the spectrum, the other half of bipolar, is when they're feeling that deep, deep depression. And it's crippling and it's absolutely horrible. And that's why the writer talks about suicide attempts. And trying to manage bipolar is very difficult. So bipolar 2, just to clarify, is the hypomanic version. So bipolar 1 is when we're more likely to see more commonly psychotic features because they're going to be in full mania. And hypomanic bipolar 2, not as often, but it can happen, such as it did in the situation of the divorce. Okay, so information point done. Now let's talk about how it's treated. It's very difficult to treat bipolar without some form of medication, and that just has to do with needing mood stabilizers and sometimes needing the help of an antipsychotic. And again, there's no shame in needing medicine. I have used psychiatric medicines in my life. Many of our patients have. There is no shame in it. Bipolar disorders have to do with some of the chemistry of the brain being just slightly off, one faucet a little drippy, and that's what that medicine does, is it kind of dries up that faucet and keeps things balanced so that you have a fair shot at life. Now, medicine alone is never sufficient to deal with bipolar disorders. You're also going to need some counseling. And usually we're going to roll out that cognitive behavioral therapy, addressing things as they appear to be and sorting that out carefully to try to land on the truth so we can measure our response. So, Nick, I appreciated that you had kind of jumped in about the addiction side and just clarifying the danger of the opiates and any psychoactive substance when somebody's dealing with bipolar disorders. This is one of the most common things that you and I have seen that people self-medicate for when they don't have their bipolar disorder properly medicated. We really see this a lot.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we see it all the time in the rehab, and it became it's very difficult because people will rely on psychoactive substances, illegal drugs, as their way to self-medicate, and in their mind it works. It provides somewhat of an effect that they're looking for, but the problem is that it leads to all these other negative consequences. So to get somebody to understand that they need to come off of the illegal substances so that we can put them on other substances. Right. Sometimes that's a really difficult concept because people are like, you're just going to take me off of drugs to put me on other drugs. Well, yes, but we're going to take you off of illicit drugs to put you on drugs that have been tested and have been shown to be effective as a treatment. And unfortunately, it's not going to get you high.
No.
But it is going to help with
tools that work
the treatment
and take away the tools that don't. So, coming back to the final question in that letter, is there a background reason for why you're feeling that you can't trust compliments? And I think Nick's right on it. I think it is going to be something having to do with the way you're interpreting those comments. What does it mean to you? And I don't know what it is, writer, but perhaps for you it means when they're giving me a compliment, they're really acknowledging that I'm weak. They're really calling me frail. They think I need built up. They think I need nice things said to me in order to sustain myself. And so they're really calling me weak, and I resent that, maybe because they're telling me that I'm weak even though they're saying nice things. It could be that. And alternatively, it could be a little bit more simple. My kids hate when I give them compliments. And I think it just, something about parents telling you nice things about you either seems disingenuous or condescending somehow. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. And that could be part of this too, Scoopdemic. It could be there.
I think that could definitely be a part of it. I think that's probably less likely in this case, but I can speak from my own personal experiences that we don't learn how to accept a compliment. It's not something that we're ever really taught. It's something that we have to kind of figure out. And for me, it still to this day, I feel really weird when somebody gives me a compliment. So I've had to learn how to react to that in a positive way. Yeah. I think in this particular situation, I think a big part of it just has to do with our own view of ourselves. If I see myself very negatively and I beat myself up and I have this negative perception of who I am as a person, and then somebody compliments me, right, or somebody says, hey, you did a great job with this one thing. Well, now I've got this cognitive dissonance that I have to resolve. Yes. Because this doesn't fit with my belief system. I'm getting new information and I don't know where to put it. So I'm not going to change my belief system. So instead of changing my belief system, what can I do? I can distort the information. Right. And one of the ways I can distort the information is by discrediting the source. Right. And saying, well, you don't know what you're talking about.
You don't know what you're talking about, or here's 10 reasons why you're wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's a really great observation. And, to the writer again, another thing that a therapist would probably do with you if that was something that was ever able to be pursued is they're probably going to even start doing some exercises with you in which they try to help you find an accurate understanding of self. And yeah, there's some exercises that have to do with complimenting yourself. There's some exercises that have to do with challenging some of the cognitive distortions about yourself and your own value that may have built up over time. But I think Nick and I are both trying to tell you that it is very likely that there is a cognitive distortion at work inside of your perspective, which is causing you to resent these kind things being said to you and to ultimately reject them and react poorly to them. And the fact that you're able to see that, to acknowledge it, and to write into our show to talk about it represents to us that you're starting to become aware of it, which is wonderful because we want you to challenge that. And we want you to ask, what is this person saying to me? And what is it I think I'm hearing? And let's make sure that we're getting the truth because they are trying to tell me something. Am I getting their message as they intended it? And am I prepared to challenge the way I'm hearing it so I can make sure I've got it accurately?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I also have to compliment you on your awareness. I think that's huge. That's definitely a good first step. So
yeah, and stay sober, man. You're absolutely right to have run for the hills when the opiates got into you and it became a problem. Stay sober above all. With bipolar 2, you do not want to mess with this, mixing in psychoactive substances that are not medicines. It will never end well.
Right, exactly.
Well, thanks for writing in, Scoopdemic, and welcome to our community. We're grateful to have you.
Yeah.
Well, Nick, we have reached the end of the show where it is time for some announcements and some apologies. First, we have a few announcements about the Pod Therapy Fantasy Football League.
Oh, it was a good week one.
Yeah, week one
really
went great
bad
for
week
both
two.
of us. Week 2, we got wrecked. So in week 1, the announcements are that Jim beat Andrea after she left Sammy Watkins on the bench, and so that gave me a stunning opportunity to wreck her, which I did. Who did you beat in week 1 there, Nick?
I crushed Borderline of Scrimmage.
Yeah, you
in
did.
Week 1.
Yeah, by 50
by a
freaking
lot.
points.
Yeah, that was huge. That was definitely huge. Borderline of Scrimmage is
you forgot who it is.
Damn it!
Well, I'll tell you how. Go ahead.
Was it Stewart?
I think I'm playing Stewart. I think he's Steve Young.
Oh my God!
I'll let you figure it out. Now. But Borderline did get crushed, and he got crushed because Nick played a.
Oh, it was Leon.
Oh, it was Leon
Kassab. Yeah,
Leon
that's
Kassab.
Right.
Well, he got soundly beaten because you played the backup running back for the Chargers, which was glorious. So that was pretty lovely. Of course, in week 2, we both got junk smashed. I lost to Steve Young. I lost by freaking 5 points. despite him playing Drew Brees, who, as you heard at the top of the show, doesn't have fingers that work anymore. So he actually went negative on the team. But Steve still beat me because OBJ is technically God. And that got him way too many points. The league was very generous. So I went down in week 2. How about you? Did you lose in week 2?
By a lot. Yeah, 165 to 120. Brian Lehman's Philly Freudians.
Oh, that was such a good name.
Beat the crap out of my Milgram Shockers.
Yeah.
It was pretty bad.
Now, I think that
terrible.
He won. In that one, it was glorious because he won by 45 points, which is just mean-spirited. And he won because he put up the New England defense, and they put up 35 points. That was insane. They beat every quarterback in the league. And I think they got like 4 interceptions and 2 touchdowns. So it was disgusting. So
yeah.
Anyway, so weeks 1 and 2 are behind us, and as I say that, I am actually looking up who we are playing in week 3. Do you have your app open? Can you tell us who you're playing?
I go up against Scooperman Complex, which is our buddy Smitty.
Yeah. I am up against Dan Martin, whose team is called Pod Therapy Listens to You. I am projected to lose to him, and I have no doubt given my luck. So, anyway, I wish you terrible luck, Dan. Dan, yeah, he does need a win. He's getting wrecked. But I believe he has Antonio Brown. Yeah, he does. So this is going to be bad. But luckily, he's got Antonio Brown on his bench right now, so we're going to hope for that. I hope he doesn't hear this show in time to change that. In other announcements, we want to thank Kate Keller, who is the creator of the Pod Therapy comic. And she recently published a lovely 4-panel piece that almost perfectly depicted my entire vasectomy. Thank you, Kate.
It was glorious. It was so good. Oh, I laughed so hard when I saw that.
It was really effective. And I just want to point out, though, she did get 2 points wrong. The nurse was misrepresented racially in her comic, and the nurse was also absolutely attracted to me and asked me out for dinner. That little tidbit was left out of the comic. So I just want that to be noted.
Because there's no evidence of that. That's just...
I know what I heard. While I was screaming in pain. All right, we're at the part of the show where Jim has some apologies. I'd again like to apologize to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for tweeting a cartoon in which he shouts down the Pharisees, preaching to them the truth of how to pronounce the word pillow. While we aren't sure what Jesus really said, I can only speculate as to how he pronounced that word.
Pillow.
Pillow. Dear President Donald Trump, I'm sorry that when you fired National Security Advisor John Bolton, that I tweeted a clearly fake termination letter from your office implying that you believed the individual you were firing was legendary singer Michael Bolton. In fairness, Michael Bolton would have been a more effective international negotiator and probably would have kept us out of all future wars. You can't argue with the sweet and velvety pipes of Mr. Right. Michael Bolton. Name one Michael Bolton song, Nick. Yeah, that's one of them. You could go with Jack Sparrow.
When a Man Loves a Woman.
Yes. Yes. Oh, God, what a good song. Dear Japan, I'm sorry that when CBS News tweeted saying a new species of dinosaur had been discovered in your nation, that I speculated that this might explain the declining population of your country. If dinosaurs do in fact live in Japan, I probably shouldn't assume that they would find the Japanese delicious. But, I mean, who doesn't? It's time to move on to Patreon.
That's at Cincinnati Shrink on Twitter. You need to reach out to him.
Get shadow banned on Twitter. It's time to thank all of our Patreons, Nick, and we got some new ones. I don't know if you saw this, but we got some THERAPALs in the mix and some THERAPODs. You want to do the THERAPALs and I'll do the THERAPODs?
Sure. Yeah, we got Moxie Fox bumped her pledge up to $2. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Moxie Fox.
And JD bumped up to $2 as well. Thank you.
And JD insisted that we not shout out to him. So we're doing it anyway.
Maybe he doesn't listen to this part.
I'm sure he doesn't listen to the podcast at all. I'm sure he just wonders where the hell $2 a month goes. He probably just gave it somewhere. We also want to thank our newest THERAPODs. We got some new THERAPODs. We have Terrible Monkey Scoop. We have Creamer Adam, Craig Little, Jim Hunter, and that dirty son of a bitch, Dan Martin, bumped his pledge up to $19.99 in an attempt to fall just short of TheraProducer. Nice try, Dan. Listen for your name in the ex officio section coming shortly.
And we especially want to thank our bosses, the Elite Eight, the mysterious and shrouded Illuminati members of our fan club, the TheraProducers. Thank you, Smitty Scoop, Jake Schneider, Robert Brownie, Jr. Mentz, chairman of the board, and highly respected. And
NFL
Kayla Lansbury,
wide receiver.
David Data Scoop Vialon, Judy Schneider, Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, Dr. Ben Don, and ex-officio board members Ellie O'Dare and Dan Martin.
Dan freaking Martin, who is going down in flames this week, and I hope he does not remember to play Antonio Brown. If you would like to hear this episode uncut and unedited and enjoy our spontaneous side projects, including our book club and the Pod Therapy Fantasy Football League, you can go to www.patreon.com/therapy and sign up, and thank you all for supporting mental health. That's all the time that we've got for this week's session. We want to thank our landlords, the Ice Cream Social Podcast, and thanks to those of you who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Share this episode with someone who needs it by opening this episode's description in your podcast app and copying and pasting the link we provided into your social media. Don't forget, you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter at PodTherapyGuys, and at patreon.com/therapy.
Do you want to submit a question to the show? Ask anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm Nick Tanchman.
I'm eating Jacob's sushi.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.